Welcome to Behind the Barcode, the podcast that goes beyond the label to uncover the stories of the faces behind your favorite products. We're your hosts, Anna and Sydney.
In this podcast, we dive into the dynamic world of consumer packaged goods with a focus on better-for-you products. As entrepreneurs ourselves, we know firsthand the challenges and triumphs of bringing a product to market. That's why we're here to share the journeys of fellow innovators, industry experts, and entrepreneurs who are making waves in the CPG space.
Join us as we sit down with inspiring guests to explore the stories behind the UPC codes, uncovering the passion, perseverance, and purpose driving their businesses forward. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, a budding startup, or simply curious about the stories behind the products you love, this podcast is for you.
So grab your favorite snack and get ready to go behind the barcode.
Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Barcode podcast. Today we have Lex behind the barcode. Lex is the founder of Lexington Bakes. We're so excited to have you. So if you want to get started and just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with Lexington Bakes.
I have been a brand designer, brand strategist for 15 years, which sounds insane. I was previously at Johnson & Johnson for 10 years, which is even crazier, like a millennial at a same job for 10 years. Wow. But the reason I've stayed there for 10 years is because I was able to explore all these other avenues and interests. And like, that was the best part of like having a stable career that I was also passionate about. Like, I got to explore other passions. So I had 3 other startups before Lexington Bakes. And it's not that I was obsessed with owning a startup or starting a business. I was just like, I want to do these things, and it's the most viable path to do them is like, all right, can you make a living out of them? The first one was a magazine right out of college. I had all these friends who were like designers and writers and makeup artists and photographers, and I'm like, I worked at magazines as an intern. Nobody pays for anything. Like, do you guys want to get together and do this? And everyone was young and out of college, and I'm like, fuck yeah. So we did, and we had some like TV celebs interviewed. I like set up, organized photo shoots. I was the editor. I think that was the earliest part of me learning how to like not only write, but edit other people's writing. That ended after 6 months because I almost got in a car crash because I was so tired because I literally pulled 2 all-nighters back to back. After that, I learned how to code and I built a design marketplace for brands to find design firms. This was like 8 to 10 years ago, and I feel like it was too early because no one wanted to invest. And now I feel like there's like 3 competitors. After building a design marketplace, I launched a queer activism apparel brand. Ooh. I was so sick and tired of all these like whimsical pride shirts. I'm like, I'm not a fucking joke. Like there's history in queer liberation, and I wanted to bring that to the forefront. So I designed these like really cool t-shirts, graphic t-shirts that had substance and like initiated conversations when people would see you wearing them. It's like, what does that mean?
That's really cool.
That was so cool. It lasted for 2 years. I broke my spine in the middle of that journey, so that was fun. 8 months of the most excruciating pain of my life, like a level 10 out of 10. I moved to LA a month after spine surgery, and then COVID happened. And by the end of it, I was just like, I don't have it in me to lead this brand anymore. I was facing so much hatred. Obviously, it's a queer brand. Like, there are going to be haters. And I was just tired of dealing with comments and bullshit. And I'm like, I'm doing this alone. Like, I don't want to do this alone. Shut that down. So I had accepted that, like, all right, I'm just going to go back to my like design career. I love that. For a few months, I was like the happiest in my life. I was the skinniest I've ever been, but like the fittest.
Were you still working a full-time job during all of this?
Yeah.
So these were all your little side hustles?
All side hustles. Meanwhile, I was still advancing my design career. Like, it wasn't a passive thing. Like, I was still going to like design lectures and design conferences and like learning new skills and new programs and getting promoted and taking on more work. I like saved myself thousands of dollars of mistakes by just mocking up what the new size would look like and putting it next to my full size one. And I'm like, oh my God, like that is really cute, nice packaging and like super tight. But compared to the other things on shelf that are even low, like less net weight, this is going to look crazy expensive. Like visually, the package has to look like it belongs and that it's on par with what's next to it. Because like if you make a super cute tiny little square and it's thick, but the dimensions are small, someone else has like a flatter, thinner product with bigger dimensions, or their packaging is just oversized, it's going to make it really hard for consumers to pick you over them. You have like a few seconds to communicate the value of your product. You have to look at things in 3D, test them out before you place orders for packaging on the screen.
Oh my God. Yes. And we had this whole text conversation back and forth because right now I just, in our opinion, I'm going to lump us together for this, that the food business is going in that direction because of the economy. People are wanting to spend less money on food, still have it be high quality. At least we're talking about the LA market. But we've seen that trend where people are going from a 3-pack to a 2-pack or a 2-pack to a 1-pack because people are trying to offer value to customers, like brands. So Lex and I were having that discussion a few days ago. It's like, okay, how do we keep our brand integrity, but then also maybe make adjustments and change the size? That's number one. Number two, I'll never forget the day that I had my shipper box that I thought was the right size. And I went to Erewhon Beverly Hills with my brother. It was like 9 p.m. And I had it. I was so excited. I think there was an order for 10,000 of them in the queue. This is a real story. And I put the box on the shelf and it doesn't fit. And I'm like shoving it. Oh my God. I like tears. I'm like having a mental breakdown.
Horrible.
In the middle of Erewhon Beverly Hills. My brother's like, why are you crying? It's just a box. And I'm like, you know, that's what it looks like to the outside, like to just a regular. No, I'm saying my brother's not a regular person. I don't mean that he's my brother. I just mean he's like, oh, it's just a box. But then here I am getting so upset because I'm thinking about the purchase order, thinking about how much money I already wired to the company to print the boxes, the designer who has to reformulate the design. And my mom always said, you got to double check. And I didn't listen to her. And I just put it into production. And then, anyways, I figured it out in the end. I'm just saying it's so important that you print it and do all that because
this is why it's important to hire good, experienced designers.
Yes.
Because there's so much more beyond that like a good designer, an experienced designer working in CPG is going to know what to watch out for. Some shelves have a lip. And if your product your box doesn't come above the lip, it doesn't matter what you put on it, no one's going to see it. Yeah. I've designed like 100,000 products around the globe in the last 15 years.
You designed all of your packaging.
Yeah. And this is our new design because even I make mistakes. So our first iteration of this, everything was just gold foil.
Yes.
And it was designed for online. Like you get this beautiful white marble box and you unwrap it and it's gorgeous. Like, oh my God, 4 gold foil brownies. Like, F yeah. It was fine on shelf for the first like year and a half because we only had 2 SKUs. So like you can tell the difference between a cookie and a brownie. Now that we're launching different flavors of brownies, it's more important that the packaging is more functional than beautiful because you need to communicate the difference. And not even just to the consumer, but to the retail employees, because they will forget that you have 3 SKUs and only order 2. And then you're like, why do I have 0 velocity for the SKU? It moves like crazy. What's going on? And they're like, you have 3 flavors? I'm like, yeah.
We're trying to figure out more brand coherence, especially because we're going to be launching more SKUs of all of our products. And just being able to look at them on the shelf and be able to differentiate them and know right away. And especially because you don't want like the employees like stacking them behind each other. Like you want them to stand out each individually.
Like when I was designing skincare and like body lotion, we wanted to have all these like different colored pumps for like differentiation on shelf, but also just because it looked cuter. And at some point we're just like, what are the chances that in the plant, the manufacturing plant, someone picks up the wrong color pump? That is a very high likelihood. So like the more complexity you add to your packaging design, whether it's the structure design or the graphic design, Like, you have to think about all the different people who are going to touch and make your product and eliminate all those risks of something going wrong. What's funny is that like our commercial kitchen is maybe like a couple miles from the nearest Erewhon, and it takes like 10 times the mileage for it to get to that Erewhon because it just has to go through the different routes. And like, we have to ship our products to a distribution center that is so further than like any Erewhon next to us in order for them to then manage that inventory, like the distributor, to then have it delivered to the store. And I'm like, so we're going to go 3 miles out to go 1.5 miles back. But that's the reality. Like, that's how the business works. It would be impossible for any retailer to work with every single brand directly and like, oh my God, who do I have to email to order? What form? Like, every brand is going to have a different system. It's like, no, that's why distributors exist, because you have like 1 or 2 distributors. It's a catalog. You add all the items you need. It's, again, reducing that complexity. Our brownie, I still make them. I'm a one-person show, from sourcing ingredients to packaging, designing the packaging, developing the recipes, being in production, making the brownies, packaging them, boxing them up, coordinating freight to get the brownies to the distributor, then working with retail partners to order from the distributor.
Do you have a culinary background, or how did you start formulating the recipes?
After the very last startup, which was the queer activism apparel brand, I took a break. I like finally had like enjoyed my life. I fell back into my passion or hobby, one of my passions, which is baking. In that 10-year span of working at J&J and experimenting with 4 other startups, I would still bake on the regular. I taught myself how to bake with Google. One day I bought a KitchenAid mixer because I had enough money to do so. It was like $400 or $500. And I had moved to a new apartment that had this gorgeous, like, huge kitchen. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to bake. I would bring treats into work every Monday because for 2 years straight, I would bake every single weekend. And it would be something new every weekend. And that quickly led, like, within a couple of weeks, because I, of course, posted everything on Instagram, like true millennial. And by December, people were like, all your stuff looks so good on Instagram. Like, can you, like, we want you to come to the party, but can we pay you to cater, like, bring some stuff? I'm like, sure, I was going to bring it anyway, but I'll take the money. Everyone at work was just like raving about everything I made. And the constant feedback was, I normally don't like macarons, but I love yours. They're not too sweet. I normally don't like brownies, but I like yours. And I'm like, well, what the hell is it? What am I doing differently? Yeah. And that gave me the confidence to know that, like, it's my palate. Because I was finding these recipes, but I was like after trying them, I'm like, oh, I don't like this. I'll change this. There was a lot of experimentation and relying on my taste buds to, like, perfect and refine stuff. That's my culinary background. It's just like, and so many great cooks and chefs around the world just learned in a kitchen.
I love how you said you, like, perfected it with your own palate.
But when you get enough feedback of people telling you, I love your baked goods and I normally don't, you have to figure out, like, well, why? And is that a reason to start a bakery? I never wanted to start a bakery. I never wanted to start Lexington Bakes. Like, I didn't want to turn the thing I loved into a business because it sucks all the joy out of it. Luckily, I'm in this for 2.5 years, and, like, there is still so much joy. And I think it correlates to the success and the trajectory of the brand. If the brand wasn't performing as well, like, no, it would not be fun to go and bake 100,000 brownies of the same flavor in a year. Like, that's not fun for me. I love developing new flavors, working on the packaging and, like, the brand and, like, new accounts and, like, all that stuff. Like, I don't want to bake the same brownie every week, but I do because that's what I need to do to get my business up and running. I haven't raised a single dollar outside of my, like, savings that I put into this. Owning everything, being able to control it all, knowing that people care and love about what I'm doing is where all the joy is. I will go and do the grunt work because there's still so much joy on the other side of it. So a big part of why I started this is because on Instagram, when I was baking and everyone was like, we want to buy your brownies, the reason they wanted to buy them on Instagram is because I was showing these amazing ingredients I was using. Like, that's the allure of, like, how do you pre-sell $5,000 for a brownie nobody's ever tried or heard of from a following of 300 friends and family on Instagram? And it's like, they were a part of the journey of, like, how I was baking, and they really loved the ingredients that I was using. So I wanted to make sure that whoever sees this on shelf, on the back of pack, We have radical ingredient transparency. And what does that mean? Because like everyone has been like, well, we have ingredient transparency too. And I'm like, yes, but it's not radical.
You take it to a new level.
Radical is putting Cho Chocolate's logo on here, Wholesome Sugar, Nielsen Massey Vanilla, Strauss Butter. And it's not like I just on a whim added these logos on there. No, I reached out to all of these people that I source ingredients from. And I'm like, hey, I would love to have your permission to list out, in addition to our standard ingredient list that's required by the FDA, our voluntary radical ingredient transparency list, which lists all the specific brands that we source from. And it goes beyond just knowing like the good ingredients that are in it and that you're going to eat. But when you buy Lexington Bakes, you're not only supporting me, you're supporting all these other brands that are in the brownie. So it's important to me that all those ingredients do good for the planet, because our brand exists to do good for the planet. So they're all either B Corp certified or have really strong environmental programs.
Like the quality of your products is so high. Like, how do you deal? And it's also one of the most expensive desserts on the market because it's phenomenal. Like, you can just taste the quality in every single bite.
Thank you.
But how do you deal with that price resistance?
You would be surprised. There is no resistance to the price. It's because we're not arbitrarily charging a luxury price for a non-luxury item. The design, the name, everything about the brand is designed to communicate the value of what you're getting. As a design strategist, my goal was for this new brand that no one's ever heard of on shelf, how do I, one, make someone stop their pattern of scanning the shelf? And two, how do I communicate like what's inside before you even pick it up? So one, transparent package. You don't have to wonder what's inside if it's going to match the picture that's been photoshopped and like beautified. Like, you know exactly what you're getting, just like you would in a bakery case.
Yes.
So this is my bakery in every grocery store. That's why the packaging is clear and transparent.
Yes.
It also reflects the brand values.
Yes.
Two, that price disrupts consumer shopping behavior. If you're scanning the shelf and you see 66611, what the F? You pick it up.
Disruption.
That is my goal as a designer, is to get you to notice my product. So why is it $11? Well, it's 5 ounces when everything else is 2 ounces. So it's a luxury item because of what's inside, not because of the price. And I think once people realize that like per ounce, it's one of the most affordable products for an all organic, all fair trade, really good real ingredient baked good. That's why it's working, because I'm not trying to scam anyone or deceive them. It's a very honest product. It is what it is. It's big, so you can take it home and like cut it up if you want, which most people do. Either cut it into 4ths or 9ths. I'm doing this because people wanted me to create the product. I'm not pushing my agenda into the world. I'm creating something that people wanted, which is a brownie that doesn't upset your stomach. You can eat the whole thing, the whole 5 ounce thing. And people are like, how is it that I can eat a 5 ounce brownie from you and not have a tummy ache? And I have like a tiny bite of something else that's fake and I feel like crap. The quality of the ingredients, that's the luxury. I have learned early on to think big picture and act small picture. So when people pitch me their ingredients, I look at how long has the company been around. Like, yes, I want to support other startups, but I'm not going to put my business at risk to do that. So it's a really tough sell for me to take an ingredient from another emerging brand, because like an investor investing in you, like, I don't know if you're going to be around in 2 or 3 years. Like, this is going on my packaging. If you suddenly go out of business or run out of stock, I can't easily swap. So one, I look at like a risk assessment of the ingredient I'm sourcing, the company I'm sourcing from. And two, I let them know like, hey, look, this is what we're projecting for this year. Is that volume doable for you? This is what we're projecting for next year. Like, I have an airline deal in the works. I immediately went to my ingredient suppliers and I'm like, hey, this is going to be like 14 times our regular volume. Can this work? Or do I need to go somewhere else? So just, again, transparency. Work with your partners. Know where you're going. Know what you want to do. Like, I've learned about sales. Like, it's not this abstract thing of like, oh my God, I don't know what our sales are going to be next year. It's like, well, no, what do you want to sell next year? Like, if I want to hit 2 million next year, it's like, okay, well, how much product you need to sell 2 million next year.
So before we spill the tea, can you talk to us about some of the challenges in terms of operations that you've had in your business / we know that you're a refrigerated product, and Anna and I have both had experience with our products being in the refrigerated space. Can you shed some light on that?
From what angle?
From shelf life, in terms of shipping, in terms of packaging.
Okay, so when I first started, a big component to me doing this was I don't want to ship in styrofoam. I don't want to ship in cold packs. Like, this product has to be minimally offensive to the planet. Because my very first bake was macarons, and you have to refrigerate them as part of the process of like them maturing and like the flavors building, and then realizing like, oh, you can also freeze the macarons for like a year. Like, so the fridge and the freezer have become my best friends in baking. When I was making the brownies, the way we get such clean cuts is we freeze them. And I had this epiphany. It's like, oh, how long can we freeze them for? If they're going to go in the freezer anyway to be cut. And then after like some testing and like research, it's like, well, if you formulate well, you can freeze it for like up to a year. And I have products that have been frozen for like 6 months that I've shipped out, and people are like, this tastes like you made it yesterday. Like, what is going on? It has to do with just like the way you develop the recipe and like reducing the moisture content. The amount of chocolate in our brownie is insane. Most of the brownies on the market are made with cocoa powder and eggs and flour and blah, 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 blah. It's a chocolate cake. It's not a brownie. It's a chocolate cake. Our brownies are made by melting butter and chocolate, and a lot of it. That's what a traditional brownie is. Chocolate has a shelf life of like a year ambient. So that contributes to like hour-long frozen shelf life. They also don't freeze. When it came to the cookie, and yes, it's a cookie. This is a cookie. It's a square cookie. It's still a cookie.
Yes.
Everyone loves to call it a brownie or a blondie. No, this is not a blondie. It's a cookie. And what makes it a cookie is the dough. Like, if you take the same dough and roll it into a ball and bake it, it's a cookie. Mm-hmm. Just because it's a square doesn't mean the dough suddenly becomes blondie dough. Like, we have blondies. They're primarily butter and white chocolate and sugar. There's no chocolate in the blondie. The chocolate chip cookie, if you were to make a round cookie and put it in the freezer for a year, the edges are thinner than the middle. So they would become hard and crumbly and dry and just gross. Like, no, it wouldn't work. But because it's a square cookie, it has even like thickness and texture. Because it's baked in a pan, it doesn't spread the way a round cookie would spread, so it's more intact and it retains some of that gooiness, which is also why it tastes like cookie dough, which everyone loves. Yeah. But it's not raw. It's fully baked. It's baked to like 180 degrees, kills, right? Like 165 is where you kill salmonella. It's why you can't eat cookie dough, because there's salmonella in the flour. Potentially, sometimes, you don't know. Anyway, all of that goes into like developing the recipe to make sure like it can be frozen for so long. It retains the moisture. When it thaws, it tastes like a fresh baked good. It's amazing. And then you can put it in the fridge at retail, because like you're not going to go into the freezer section and take a brownie out next to the ice cream. So you can put these in the fridge for like 60 days. Really, it's like 90 days. I say 60 for freshness, because like it's safe longer. But I want to make sure you're getting really fresh products. So at 60 days, I'm like, you got to take it out of the fridge. Like, I don't want anyone buying a brownie that's been in the fridge longer than 60 days, because I want you to have the most amazing, luxurious experience, and the fresher, the better. If you're at Air One especially, like, you're getting the freshest product out there.
I always say that to everyone asking me. The freshest product for us is at Air One always, just because of how quick the turnaround is.
Even at Foxtrot, we were moving products so quickly that within like a week or two, the product would turn over and you'd have fresh stuff from the freezer.
It's amazing. Yeah.
That's so cool. I never thought about the shape. I never thought about how important that was. So that's really interesting to hear.
The shape also impacts the environmental consciousness of it. It's called right sizing. But when you make a package that fully wraps the product and there's no airspace, you have a box where these fit perfectly and there's no airspace, and then this goes into another box with no airspace, that right-sized packaging reduces emissions and kind of fuel waste and all this other stuff, because you're more efficient with building your pallets. You can get more efficient with like loading a truck. All these tiny little things have this like snowball effect, and it impacts
100%
resources. And because the product can be frozen for a year, we eliminate food waste. Like I haven't had to toss anything out. So when we ship online, they're pulled from the freezer the day they're shipped, they're packed, and they thaw or slack in transit. And when they arrive at your doorstep within 2 to 3 days, fresh baked treat.
I could tell they were frozen when they got to my house in the best way. I was like, wow, this looks really fresh.
Well, what's amazing is in California, because we're based in California and ship in California, ground shipping is like overnight.
Oh, yeah.
So like we can ship from here to New York within 3 days, and it's like cost effective and efficient for us. Like we charge $10 flat rate shipping, but it costs us like $16. So like everyone's like, oh my God, your shipping's so expensive. I'm like, you don't even know. You're only being charged $10, but we pay $16.
You do 2-day air to New York or ground?
3-day.
3-day. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. In the winter, it's crazy because basically the country's a refrigerator, so it arrives cold. Yeah. But even in the middle of summer, like the treats arrive, no one has an issue. You pop them in the fridge for a little refresh, 15 minutes.
And people don't even realize the charges that are associated with refrigerated product. Yeah. Like temp controlled trucks and ice packs and this and all that stuff. It's definitely an added cost.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Salt and Main.
Salt and Main is our new media arm. It's also because I am a compulsive builder. And after 2 years of doing the same thing, I'm like, I need something new. Not that like my life isn't complicated enough as it is, but I have a history. Like I love writing, I love editing, I love designing. And I didn't want to just throw a blog on the Lexington Bakes website because I'm like, this doesn't really have to do with Lexington Bakes. Like this is more outside of Lexington Bakes. Like I'm meeting all these other amazing, incredible people in food and beverage, not just founders. They're like buyers and our ingredient suppliers and editors and writers and food stylists, food photographers, chefs. There's so many people in the food and beverage world that like no one has a clue. Like these are the people putting food on your table.
Yeah.
I want to elevate them and highlight them and just like show the world all the work that goes behind the scenes. So Salt and Main is a new digital publication. Our first interview series is called Conversations with Food People, similar to what we're doing here. Aww. But it's a written form. It's not a podcast. One day I will have each of you on it.
I love it. That. It's cool.
Oh, I have to tell you about the background behind the name.
Okay.
So salt was once used as currency, which is like the coolest thing I ever discovered because it was that valuable. Salt is also the most ubiquitous like ingredient in like every food item.
Yeah.
It is the most common preservative. And then Main is for Main Street for like not only startup founders, but like a lot of the professions in the food and beverage world are independent people, like chefs, food writers, food stylists. All these people are just like essentially Main Street, right? Like they've got their own businesses they're managing, even though they're one person show. So that's how I paired Salt and Main together. Love that. And at the intersection of those two is where these conversations lie.
Very intentional. And let's cap this episode on the fact that French Squirrel and Lexington Bakes are in the thick of...
Into the thick of it.
In the thick of it, which part of this podcast is being real on business, right? And what we're going through. And whenever this episode airs, there was a recent closure of a major retailer that Lexington Bakes and French Squirrel were stocked in. And they had multiple locations, and they were a big part of our businesses, plural.
What are you guys doing? That's what I would like to know, because I've never experienced something like that. So like, what do you do as a business when a store closes?
So aside from crying, I'm kidding. There's no crying in business. Like
that's what my dad says.
I learned very early when I made my very first mistake. I was like, what the fuck is crying gonna do? Like you're just wasting time. Like get to the solution. Crying only works when there's someone else to see you cry to like come help. Like you're at the top. If you cried, you've only got yourself to come help.
True.
Who are you going to go crying to? Except I call Sydney sometimes.
Yeah.
On a serious note, I'm torn between two decisions right now because When I started Lexington Bakes, within 3 months, this retailer was like, hey, we're going to put you in 22 stores across 4 states. And I was like, holy moly, like, yeah, okay, cool, let's do it. Now that the business has grown and matured and like I've grown as a founder, and like in hindsight, I probably would not have done that. I'm like, nope, I'm in California. I'm going to exhaust California before I go into other states. I feel like this is a unique opportunity for me to reevaluate, like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What's right for the business? What's the most efficient use of our resources and our funds to grow the business, and where? And after giving it some thought, I'm like, yeah, it would be easy to just say, cool, we're going to focus on the West Coast because that's where we're based. It reduces our like expenses for different warehouses and freight and all this other stuff. But we were in those states for 2 years. That's a lot of momentum to just give up on. So I'm not going to pull out of those states. I've already reached out to like 20 independent stores in those states to say like, hey, we have these fans that are already DMing us who are like, they're sad. Like we were moving a lot of product a week. There's still business to be had here. And it's not even just about the business. It's like, you make connections with people, like you become part of their like staple pantry items. I would be devastated if my favorite treats suddenly weren't available where I live.
We've been getting so many messages on Instagram. It's really sad that they
really
used to go every week to get our dates at this retailer, and now where can we find you guys?
Exactly. And like,
sad.
Yes, business wise, it would make so much more sense to just stay in California. But at the same time, like you have to think about the brand and the community of your brand, and like there are people involved in this that care about the things you make, that enjoy the things you make, that obviously supported your brand because no one else was offering what you offer. And I don't want to let those people down. Like, yes, it's going to be so much more complicated to get into like 20, 30 independent stores versus one chain that was in all those cities that made it easy. But I think it's worth it to make sure the people who like our brand still have access to it.
The difference for our business is that this retailer was the only thing keeping us in a certain distributor. And so because of that, this whole week has been scrambling to withdraw inventory from distribution. So I see your point, but like French Squirrel needs that product. And I'm going to try to find ways to service, as you said, to service those same cities that retailer was in. I've been pulling inventory out from 3 different warehouses across the US and shipping them back to our manufacturers, which is so expensive.
So what's the alternative option? You just leave the inventory there? Like, what do you, does it just go to waste?
So
do we know what happens to it?
There are some other options that are being presented, like our distributors working to find other retailers for us. They're also offering, if you want to move to another warehouse, like obviously you're not the only brand here. Like, let's put all the brands onto one truck together and like we can help offset that cost. So there's a lot of options being presented. There's just a little patience to find the best path forward. So yesterday, Sydney and I only had one path, which was like, all right, get our inventory out. Today, there's like 6 different potential paths, which is really cool.
We were all on a group call with all the brands that were involved in it. And I changed my whole schedule for it. I had a big meeting actually at 12 o'clock, which was arguably, I'm not going to say more important, but like as important, but I changed it. I didn't even hop on that call because I was like, I have to get on this call and, you know, just and be a part of it, because it's all these small businesses who are going through the same thing. And it's like, this is the tier, the layers of this. Like, it's not just the retailer closed, it's their employees. It's the product that was sent to the retailer, the product that's at the warehouse. What about when the store closed? There's still products on the shelf in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Both of our products are still in the refrigerators.
Still product there.
At 30 plus locations.
34.
That just shows how strong the community is too. Like, I love the CPG community and also like the community that we've created too is truly so amazing.
Yeah.
I will say I did not expect that level of support that we saw today. I was blown away and I was just like, okay, cool. I don't have to do this alone. Like, thank you. Like, this is amazing help and amazing ideas. And like, I don't think any single brand could have done what our distributor did and had the conversations that they had to find these solutions for us. So like, I feel super supported. And
Oh, no, it was great. It was cool to be like, to see the call today and say, and 27 others.
Yeah.
Like, that was awesome that like everyone was in that
That's
call.
incredible.
When one door closes, another door opens, right?
Yes. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Lex.
thank you for having me.
But where can our listeners find you?
LexingtonBakes.com if you'd like to order nationwide. Enter code barcode for free shipping.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Behind the Barcode. We hope you enjoyed diving into the stories behind the products that fill your shelves. If you enjoyed listening, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite listening platform.
Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. You can find everything linked in the show notes. And if you have a story to share or know someone who does, we'd love to hear from you.
Keep innovating, inspiring, and being curious about the stories behind the barcode. See you on the next episode.